This video is going to chew through so many subjects, I'm going to have to come back to it. Let's begin. Ever since the release of the character and creature building system in early 2011, Bionicle fans have argued and debated the place of CCBS in the construction food chain. Many place it toward the bottom, citing its simplistic look and general ease of use, claiming it to be dumbed down and simplistic compared to older building styles. Others have placed it much higher, believing those same criticisms to be its strengths, which allow it immense versatility and longevity. Regardless of which side you're on, the CCBS subject is generally regarded as controversial. The flames of debate only grew higher and hotter upon the unveiling of Bionicle 2015. As it turned out, certain wise predictions made by controversial members of the Bionicle community turned out to hold true, and the return of our beloved line used the infamous CCBS. Lines were drawn, battle stations armed, and the fight began. Which is better? Bionicle using Technic plus its own system, or Bionicle using CCBS? Today, we're going to look at it objectively and attempt to figure out which is better. We'll start off with Technics since it came first. Technics started out as technical sets in 1977, looking much different from the Technic we know now. While it incorporated the axles and pins we commonly use today, it was still heavily reliant on system brick-like parts. Over time, and after a renaming to Technic in 1984, the building system became much smoother and far more distinct, using almost exclusively Technic lift arms, panels, and other assorted pieces. While Bionicle is the most famous construction line to use Technic, it wasn't the first. That title, at least as far as I can tell, belongs to Slicers, otherwise known as the Throwbots line, released in 1999. It introduced many pieces we're familiar with, such as Rockshi arms, G1 Bionicle hands, and an assortment of other pieces that have since been phased out from use in the Bionicle line. Now, Bionicle started off in late 2000, early 2001 as a Technic sub-theme, with the line's larger sets featuring the building system the most. The smaller sets did use traditionally Technic pieces, however, as we've already established, some of those pieces are no longer in use. While many would think otherwise, the Bionicle line was only marketed as being Technic in 2001. However, the line would use the building system heavily until 2006 with the debut of the Unika build, which was a Technic-reliant design used traditionally to make humanoid figures. While many would argue that Bionicle became a building system of its own, the line was still a Technic building system. It merely used a large variety of specialized pieces meant to be used with Technic. As the years went on, the theme used Technic less and less for sure. However, it still required it to function until the final 6 sets in 2010. With that out of the way, I believe that sums up the Technic building system as a whole. Let's hop on over to CCBS. The character and creature building system was introduced in early 2011 with the Hero Factory wave ordeal of fire. This is why it is commonly referred to as the Hero Factory building system, but more on that later. The CCBS was designed to be a modular building system meant to improve upon several pieces from the prior Bionicle line, strengthening parts and reducing the need for specialized pieces. The system, as opposed to Technic, utilizes a ball and socket connection system as opposed to relying on pins and axles. However, it still incorporates them. The CCBS is comprised of a 3-layer design, with the base being referred to as the skeleton, which is comprised of individual bones. The second layer are the shells, which come in a variety of sizes and some different shape. And the third layer is comprised of additional armor or add-ons that texture the shells of any given set. All of these pieces are visibly smoother in design, a departure from the Technic building system. One of the goals of the CCBS was to use it as the base platform for any future LEGO construction sets, such as Bionicle, Hero Factory where it debuted, Chima, Ultra builds for Marvel and DC, and most recently, at the time of this video, the Ultra builds for LEGO Star Wars. The CCBS can also be found in smaller sets from Ninjago and other lines where their pieces are required most commonly for mechs. Obviously enough, there isn't a lot of backstory and explanation to the CCBS since it hasn't been around as long. With that being said, it's time to get down to today's question. Is Technic better than CCBS? To answer this question, we're going to look at a few criteria and see if either system triumphs over the other. These criteria are design and general appearance, structural integrity, and color variety. Let's begin. Starting with design and general appearance, this has long been a hot topic of discussion and debate in the Bionicle fanbase. Many strongly believe the original Technics style design to be superior, as it looks more robotic due to the immense detailing on a lot of the pieces. Counters to this point make claim that while they do look robotic, they're too cluttered and have no visual cohesion. Many claim the original design was poorly done, as most of the stylized pieces bore different textures compared to each other, especially when compared to previous years. When the CCBS debuted, many were critical of its design, saying it was too simplistic and looked cheap, like something meant to be a bootleg of an actual LEGO set. As time went on, however, comparisons were drawn and many grew accustomed to the system. Eventually, it ended up being enjoyed by many thanks to its consistent design and flexibility. While some have had issue with the reuse of certain pieces, all of them form a whole of which is easier for the eye to comprehend. Up until 2016, the CCBS has remained visually consistent in its use and application. Moving on, let's jump into structural integrity. All LEGO is made of plastic, no surprise. So that being the case, you can't expect any piece to hold up under years of abuse. Pieces used in construction are no exception, especially given their commonly advertised feature of not only being buildable, but deconstructible in order to make your own creations or various story-related combiners. For Technic, this posed an issue at certain junctures for Bionicle. The first half of the line's sets stood up fairly well, only breaking under vigorous use or intentional damaging. However, around 2006/2007, issues began to arise. Regular use would break line joints in one or two uses, and other pieces were becoming noticeably more brittle. In 2008, LEGO reworked and redesigned the appearance of the hand/joint piece, making it less detailed and giving it a fuller design. Unfortunately, this made things much worse. While the joints in 2006 and 2007 broke after some use, it was really only the lime joints that were majorly affected. I'm not personally clear on the reason for that, but I believe it was a heating and cooling error. However, do not quote me on that. Meanwhile, in 2008, the redesign was directly the cause for all of the joints becoming brittle and easily broken. As I have come to understand it, the reason for this was due to the socket being sized slightly down from what it needed to be. This, plus the slimming of the sides of the socket, resulted in the ball joint stressing the connection out and causing the joint to break. I've heard rumor of the type of paint or plastic used having something to do with it as well. However, I don't have anything to provide that backs up that claim. In 2011, the sockets were completely redesigned for the CCBS. They were properly sized as well as strengthened. Most of the pieces Bionicle used that utilized the 2008 socket were also redesigned and re-implemented, although not right away. The CCBS pieces are notoriously rugged, able to be taken apart and rebuilt with little to no concern to broken pieces. That isn't to say that there aren't cases of them breaking, as there are. However, it is much less common as opposed to the older Technics sockets. Now, with that out of the way, let's take a look at color variety. This one was difficult to research. A lot of cross-referencing and digging had to be done. I won't go into the details here, and feel free to cross-check and figure out the exact numbers, but here's what I found. For Bionicle, there were approximately 65 colors used throughout its 10-year run, compared to the CCBS, which, at the time of this video, implements around 40 colors. At this point in time, the CCBS has been in circulation for around 4.5 years. Obviously, Bionicle has had more time to implement new colors for its pieces. However, the thing to note here is that while it does have more colors, it doesn't necessarily mean it had more pieces in those colors. At least 6 of those are metallic colors that we only saw in the Chronicle from 2003. Other colors were also one-off shades and hues, or used in such a low capacity it left many fans clamoring for more, such as teal and purple. The CCBS uses all of its colors as shell pieces, give or take a few. This gives builders a wide array of elements to implement into their creations, all using the same design, which allows a clear, cohesive aesthetic. that effectively sums that all up. With that being the case, let's recap. When it comes to design and appearance, the CCBS wins. It's consistent. You may personally prefer the Bionicle Technic design, and that's fine. However, it's near impossible to argue that it has as cohesive a design as the CCBS does now. In terms of structural integrity, the CCBS also beats out the Bionicle Technic build. It does the job so much better that it replaced the old design. They may not be unbreakable, but they're sure as heck tougher. However, in the end, Bionicle currently has the CCBS beat in regards to colors. Obviously, this is because it had a 10-year head start. However, the downside to this is that some of those colors were not mass-produced for larger scale building. This in turn reduces the number of possible builds and color schemes if one only sticks to Bionicle/Technic. They'd eventually have to branch out to compatible system parts if they wish to convey a particular color scheme with more than a few highlights. So in the end, which wins? Obviously, the creature and character building system does. Alright, well, that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. That's the end of the video. Again, thanks very much for watching. Okay, fine. There is one more reason why this is the case, and I'd like to explain it if you'd lend me your ears for a little longer. The reason this is the case at all is simple. The CCBS is just what the name says it is. It's a system. Technics/Bionicle was an aesthetic, and one that was simply applied to different parts in different ways over the course of around 10 years. In its earlier 3 years, the style was fairly consistent, rarely ever branching out from its roots. However, as time went on and the line matured, new parts began to emerge and eventually deviate from the original style. Eventually, after all those years, the style became so varied that it no longer meshed. It was pistons and ridges that were just there to look cool. The CCBS doesn't do that because it follows simple principles. It's one aesthetic. It sticks to that throughout the majority of its sets. It's smooth, angular, and easy to take in. It conveys its goals simply, yet effectively. Because of all of this, it's easier to handle. It follows a simple bone and socket system, which, thanks to its durability, allows for as many possibilities as there are with Technic-built creations using more pieces to construct. And the possibilities are amplified even further when the two work in unison. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the CCBS is the superior system, because that's exactly what it is. Of course, that doesn't mean it's bad if you prefer the older style. It still holds a special place in my heart, and I'm sure it still does for a lot of you too. So enjoy it! There's nothing wrong with that. Thank you all very much for listening, and if you feel so inclined, you can help us out by checking us out over at Vessel at www.vessel.com/the TTV channel. And feel free to continue the discussion either in the comments below or on our message boards at board.ttvpodcast.com. Thank you, and farewell.